So what do we make of the persistent figuration of Asian Americans as spoilers in the Bakke case? Should we turn, as Asian Americans often do, to the model minority myth? Is that what is going on here? The standard critique of the model minority myth goes something like this. Asian Americans are presented as being more successful than they are in order to drive a wedge between Asians and blacks, to divide and conquer minorities for the benefit of whites. The model minority myth is a white supremacist ideology that must be debunked. Its blanket assertion of success exaggerates Asians' socioeconomic status and conceals the fact that, in fact, Asian national origin groups vary quite widely, right, in terms of their socioeconomic measures. To sum it up, the critique of the model minority myth says Asians aren't doing all that well. Not all Asians are doing well, and Asians are minorities too. But even when we keep all of this in mind, there's still something here that seems to need explaining. Why do many Asian Americans fare better than blacks despite being subject to past and present discrimination? Why were Asian Americans the only minority that was admitted to UC Davis Medical School in significant numbers in the general program? Why does the discrimination underrepresentation link seem to break down with Asians? So what I want to suggest to you today is that focusing on the model minority myth as an explanation for what is going on here will actually disable us from answering these questions. This is because the critique of the model minority myth is flawed as an analysis in at least two ways. It reads the valorization of Asians over blacks as merely rhetorical or discursive, and thus obscures the fact that this valorization has been enacted as social structure for nearly 2 centuries. Asians and blacks have been assigned from the start to distinct positions in the US racial order, and recognizing and naming this fact is a prerequisite for understanding differential group outcomes. The problem is not a myth that we can correct or debunk. The problem is structural positionality. The second issue, and we'll come back to this again, is that this critique reproduces the logic of minority equivalency that I've already mentioned. Okay, 20 years ago almost, in 2000, I wrote the following. The assertion of formal interminority equivalences in the face of persistent interminority differentials in status, privilege, and power facilitates the white project of using Asian Americans against blacks. Okay, I'm going to scroll down again to, a little bit further down. After all, if we view all minorities as formal equivalents, it seems presumptively unfair that one minority group should burden another in its efforts to advance. I refer to this phenomena of automatically overriding the claims of one minority group, blacks, through reference to the moral authority of the claims of another minority group, Asian Americans, as playing the racial trump card. Okay, so this was 2000. I didn't realize the word Trump would become quite so loaded. I didn't realize that this would have come to have a double meaning, that in fact this mode of deploying Asians would intersect with the phenomenon of Trumpism. But what you can hear in my words is a concern, right, about the dynamic that I identify and which I think has come to be in the Harvard case. Writing in 2010 in an article entitled People of Color Blindness, Jared Sexton discusses a phenomenon he calls people of color blindness, which he defines as a form of color blindness inherent to the concept of people of color, to the precise extent that it misunderstands the specificity of anti-Blackness, and presumes or insists upon the monolithic character of victimization under white supremacy. In a negrophobic society, Sexton argues, the fundamental divide is not between whites and non-whites, but rather between blacks and non-blacks, or between those whose abjection provides a foundation for the social order and those whose coherence and well-being are grounded upon that abjection. People of color, third world peoples, minorities, these are concepts that suggest equivalencies under white supremacy and to this extent obscure the way in which anti-Blackness divides and differentiates non-whites.